Welcome back, everyone. Guys, we have an action-packed race recap we want to bring you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the F1 Garage. We're going to dive right in because there is so much to cover from this Australian Grand Prix. We're going to take it by section, and I'm going to start off with basically the first 8 laps. So here we go. I just want to preface right off the bat. That was such a good national anthem performance, guys. Are you with me? Like, that was just sounding, performing, everything about it smooth, and it just set off a precedent that everything's going to be okay. But
wrong we were.
Yeah, so we're going to dive right in. We had 18 drivers parked up on the grid in 20 centimeter wider boxes because we've had 2 back-to-back basically problems with other cars not being able to fit in their grid boxes, so we made them bigger. And then on top of that, we had 2 people starting from the pit lane, Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. Basically, they were working on their car outside of the allotted time, so they start from the pit. And of course, everyone was expecting a one-stop race. This track surface doesn't have a lot of tire degradation, so yeah, we just we're expecting everyone to do a one-stop, and the top 8 don the medium tires. And of course, at this point, the camera cuts to the crowd. There was a record-breaking 444,631 people there, and everyone was up on their feet, and we saw a massive cutout of George Russell's head just seen in the distance, just like some woman was having a great time there.
I love the fans that just go for it with that kind of stuff.
Seriously, they bring that vibe, that atmosphere that Australia so had. So
wasn't there somebody who had the printed out tweet of Oscar Piastri, and then
he signed it.
Oscar sign it?
He signed it.
Oh, Australian fans genuinely are the best.
There was also a big poster of Yuki Tsunoda, #1 restaurant owner, poster that someone also brought. I thought that was beautiful.
That's amazing.
Let's dive right into the race start, guys. The 5 lights go out. Max Verstappen had a bad start. I mean, to be honest, this is kind of a consistent for Max to not start well. George Russell, yeah, he basically took the lead off the line and absolutely sent it into turn 1. He was on the inside going for a move that Max Verstappen basically backed out of because he had everything to lose being the race champion leader, and Mercedes had everything to win by forcing him into that kind of mistake in a sense. It was great action. Lewis Hamilton, though, by turn 3, went up to second place because he put his car in such a perfect position. Max just braked really early into turn 3. And we saw
thing to see from Max. He
was just very defensive.
There's part of me where it kind of shows like maybe some veteran thinking from him, where it's like, I'm not going to fight them in a turn because I can overtake them at any point. Mm-hmm. So like, it's smart of him to not get involved in those scenarios that a younger Max definitely would have.
Yeah, but we had someone a little bit further to the back trying to make a move that Max Verstappen definitely didn't want to make, and that was Charles Leclerc going for a classic lap 1 overtake, just doing everything in his power to put his car in a place where it just does not belong. Oh my God, Charles, stop with the lap 1 overtakes. Dude, it's getting out of hand. He literally spins out because he touched Lance Stroll's his front tire, Lance's back tire. As soon as that happens, he's airborne, he's spun, he's in the gravel, he's beached.
I feel like Charles is making these moves out of desperation. He's like, I know I can't get them elsewhere, and if I don't get this done myself, my team's not gonna make it, so I can't make this pass later on.
Yeah, so that brought out the first, and I have to say first, safety car. The fact that I even have to preface which one it was, I think says a lot about the direction this race is going to take us. But it was actually a quick turnaround because we had a green light by lap 4. And now the top 3, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, fighting all within half a second for the next 3-4 laps. And of course, right behind them is Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and Alexander Albon not too far behind. And Russell and Hamilton at one point were getting scrappy. Like, Hamilton was going for moves on George Russell. Russell was telling the team, you're asking me to manage my tires when I'm getting attacked by my own teammate. And luckily, I got to say, nothing else happened because just further back in the grid, Alex Albon went off on his own after defending from P6. Let's just take a second right there. Alex Albon in a Williams defending from P6. The dude had such a great start to this weekend, and he made it about 7 laps until he went off, basically spun, hit a barrier, and just spewed gravel. I'm talking so much gravel onto the track. It was as if the drivers were driving on the beach at a certain point. It was like someone just like poured buckets of gravel. Anyway.
So Alex Albon, he knew he was having the race of or the weekend of his life there, right?
Yeah,
and he saw that celebrity being the man in front of him and was pushing hard enough to get there, and then a little too hard, I think.
Yeah, just went off on his own, wasn't a crash or anything, but because the safety car was deployed, we saw some interesting, I don't know if that's even the right word. We saw some moves, for better or worse. We saw 2 people pit from the race lead. George Russell gives up grid position to get fresh tires, a move Mercedes has typically not done in the past. They usually like track position, especially if they're in the lead. And Lewis Hamilton immediately complains, this has put me at a massive disadvantage, because when George comes out from the pits, he drops down from the lead to P7, and also Carlos Sainz pitted, drops down from P4 to P11. So now it's Lewis Hamilton leading Verstappen ahead of Alonso.
Oh, not a good feeling.
No. So Lewis is probably at a point where he's feeling like he's hung out to dry, because Max is just going to make that pass eventually, right? Or does it? Because a red flag gets dropped. Now,
what?
Why did the red flag get dropped? We're still having an internal debate here at the podcast. Is it because the Tech Pro barrier, the tire barrier, the safer barrier, whatever it was it damaged to the point where it needed maybe some reconstruction? Was it to the point where there was so much gravel on the track it wasn't safe to drive on? We have seen instances in the past where gravel has flicked up and actually almost broken a driver's finger because they were going over a turn. That was Romain Grosjean about 4 or 5 years ago. But anyway, it was a good call.
Finger was the least of his injuries, probably.
Yeah, the mental injuries he got that year. We won't even go there. But anyway, yeah. So red flag gets called. The drivers get out. They walk around. They have a free tire change. A couple cars get new front wings. You know, it's pretty much anyone's guess. Like once it's a red flag, you can do whatever you want in terms of a strategy there. So they all throw in the hard tires. Oh, what's up, Jared? Yeah.
So George getting pitted there, was that the worst idea Mercedes could have ever had? Is there a case or do you guys think there's a case to be made for that?
Well, in terms of strategy, having to pit then and there just means by the time the rest of the field pits under green flag, maybe 3-4 laps later, he probably would have been right back up into the lead, let alone the top 3. So there was some advantageous strategy options going on, but what they didn't expect for was just a red flag. And now,
which I would say is a reasonable expectation given the circumstances. I don't think anyone is expecting a red flag there.
No, a safety car at best for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got to move forward because there is still so much to cover in this Grand Prix. We see a camera pan over and looking at the poor Charles Leclerc's Ferrari is just still tucked behind that barrier. I remember Ted and I were talking about, like, why can't Charles Leclerc get his car back into the race? But he DNF'd before the red flag came out, so that car just basically stood there. And anyway, we're going to move forward because on the way to form up the grid, we saw something pretty bad, actually. Lewis Hamilton is now the one basically acting as the safety car as they're lining up to the grid, but he goes a lot slower than Max did on the very first formation lap. So slow to the point where the entire grid backs up at a terrible spot. We're talking the same corner that Albon went off on, and there was almost a backup of 7 cars. There was a Williams narrowly avoiding contact. There was an Alfa Romeo locking up, trying to avoid a car because there were 2-3 cars wide at this point, basically stopped on the grid. And then out of nowhere, Haas, I think Kevin Magnussen, flies past through the gravel and spews gravel right back onto the track. The whole reason we had a red flag to begin with was because of this gravel, and now
red flag,
the situation
red flag.
is just the exact same. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't throw another red flag, but that's okay. because all the cars lined up, and we're about to start the second standing start. So I'm going to throw it to you, Jeff. He's going to take it away.
The irony too of Lewis acting as a safety car and going slow it's hilarious. Given all the times that they complain about the actual safety car going slow.
Oh, right. Yeah.
All right. So another controversial moment right off the bat. We see the cars lining up. We see Max in his grid box. And after the race, we start getting in on social media, we start getting pictures that his two front tires were over the line by half a tire. And in the past, like as Dylan explained, on a horizontal level, tires have been kind of moved within the grid boxes to the point where the FIA had to come in and give penalties. But on a vertical plane with Max, they didn't do anything, and that feels way more like an advantage than it would be on a horizontal plane.
Side,
Seriously, yeah. He was ahead, like front wing outside the box, wheels were like just touching the line, but every other car was like well within the margins. So
I'm not
wasn't
sure
even investigated. You know,
I'm not even sure about the
line.
ruling though. So like listeners, like there are like transmitters, and there are
just
on the track,
cameras,
and sensors on the track
everywhere
that will line up within the car and the grid box. So, I mean, in theory, Red Bull would have known if he was outside the box, but when you look at the picture, man, it's a little suspicious.
Yeah,
I will say. Okay, we're back. We're racing again. And within turn one, Hamilton leads again. By turn three, DeVries, very cool moment. He's airborne after running wide and tapping on Alpine of Ocon. But both are fine because F1 cars are not delicate, right? By lap 12, Max retakes the lead before turn 9, and we will see turn 9 play a huge part of this race. It's also a part of the race that was added for a fourth DRS section, I believe.
Fourth.
Yes, a fourth. Normally there's 3.
Two.
Two?
Average. 3 is actually more than average at most tracks. Some tracks have 1. This track has 4. 4. Yeah.
So by lap 18, we see another, mechanical failure from a team that we did not expect it from. George Russell is on fire.
His car was literally shooting flames.
So it looked like a jet. It looked like a jet, like the old V10 cars getting on fire, where it's just massive amounts of flames. And I mean, we see that he obviously is done with the race. His race is over.
What gave that away?
So I'm of course excited for that. So virtual safety car is then deployed. Lap 19, we start racing again. Dylan has said it before, but the camera cuts again to the lady holding the Russell face, and she has lit it on fire.
Yeah, she's just like, what the heck, George? Come on.
This cost me $50 to print.
No, I'm JKing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, man, hold on. My notes just gave out. That's awesome. Okay, so but during this time too of the middle of the race, we're having some fun radio talk with between Mercedes. So, but in classic fashion, right? So, like Max is complaining about the tires and talking about other teams being fast, and talking. I think about what was it, Alonso? He's like, oh, Alonso's look seems pretty quick, guys. And then sure enough, he goes on to get fastest lap. And we're just like, okay, well, at least Fernando. This is my whole thing of Lewis Hamilton just having a fun year. He's just talking the talk, man. We by here we go. So back to the turn 9, we start seeing Checo Perez coming back into the fight. All right, we see him pass
everyone.
Well, everyone, but he passes Ocon on lap 21. Next lap, he passes Piastri when both of the cars had DRS, which is an awesome fight to see. And then lap 23, we see Perez pass Yuki Tsunoda. So within no time, he's gone from the pit lane to top 10. Deservedly so. And he has since earned, at least our driver of the day. Did he actually win driver of the day?
Oh, he did.
Race? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So after his dominating return to form and getting in points, what do the FIA camera directors do? They cut to our boy Danny Rick having a good time.
Woo!
just living the life.
Yeah.
Smiling like ear to ear. And of course, the prodigal son returning makes the crowd go wild, and we love to see it.
Yeah.
We love Danny Ricciardo. Hope to see him out at the Australian Grand Prix next year, but we'll see.
He's going to be racing it next year.
Yep. All right, jumping ahead to lap 42, and the race at this point now seems like it's become all Red Bull. Max has built a 10-second lead to second place at this point, so it seems like he's just starting to pull away. And
classic
Sergio,
Max fashion.
Yep. And as Jeff just mentioned, Sergio's now in 10th place after starting in the pit lane and just passing people like they're standing still at turn 9, which is not normally a place for passing.
He made that work multiple times, though, right? Like he was the king of corner 9 for some reason.
Yeah, that just worked for him. So that Red Bull continued to stretch their legs all the way up until lap 47, when we finally hear over the radio, Max Verstappen spun off. He's done a 360. He's in the grass. Turns out on turn 13, which is the penultimate turn, he just went a little wide, maybe carried a bit too much speed, went on the grass, no spins. I wouldn't say he did a 360 or any sort of spins. He just went on the grass, recorrected, got back on the track, and continued on. So it was a little anticlimactic.
Got to put drama where drama isn't, huh?
I mean, it kind of perked my ears up again. Yeah, for those of us that were watching live, now we're talking 1 a.m. at this point. So we needed something to open our ears again. That would come in lap 52, where Lando Norris and Nico Hülkenberg were fighting for position. Lando was able to get an overtake done of Hülkenberg at turn 12, where it ended up sending Hülkenberg wide into the gravel, but the move was done nonetheless. But at this point in the race, seems like a lot of the action stopped. Seems like we can just settle into the positioning that we've seen. Lewis has done enough to seem like he's holding off Fernando, any threats there, and everybody just sort of seems to be settling into their positions. Flip ahead to lap 53, and Kevin Magnussen says, "Hold my beer," and gently taps. I will say he gently tapped the side barrier. I think when we were texting live, we weren't sure if he had hit the rumble strips or like a sausage curb. Even the commentators weren't entirely sure. They were arguing about whether or not there were screech marks on the wall or tire marks on the wall. Like, I don't think he hit the wall. There's no screech marks.
Yeah, and they were worried the tires are just giving out at this point, because they've all been running the hard since like lap 7, 8.
Yeah.
So
with 5 laps to go,
so it also, like, he didn't get a flat. the tire came off. Like the rim was still there. The tire just was, or the whole wheel was just
The
off
whole
of
wheel.
the car.
Well,
it was very odd.
It did not want to be a part of the team anymore.
Yeah. So the bump ended up cracking part of his suspension, which left the wheel as attached to the rim, as Jared was saying. It was just kind of dangling in the wind as he continued on for a little while longer.
Something hilarious though that I want to add to this. While he is like skidding to a stop, he crashes for a long time. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very long crash.
And at the end of it, he stops, and we hear over the radio, we hear, Kevin Magnussen, you have damage. Please stop the car. And we're like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
I could have been watching, called them and told them.
They didn't say, are you okay? The car, what happened? They say, you have damage. Just be careful out there.
Yep. So needless to say, another safety car is deployed to pick up the beached Haas car. After another lap or so of the safety car, guess what, guys?
What?
They finished under safety car.
Our second red flag.
Whoa.
With 3 laps to go, they decide to red flag the race again, meaning that there will be a standing start with 3 laps to go.
Technically 2, because they're actually coming back from that 55, but they line up with 2 more laps to go.
Yeah. And anything can happen at that point. Right, Jared?
Yeah, so obviously Max Verstappen was furious. I mean, a lot of them were, but Max especially,
Dude's just
right?
getting more practice on his race starts. That's all this race was to him. Like, he does need it, apparently. Like,
I mean, for him, though, like, Lewis had been getting better starts than him, so at this point he should have been a little worried, because with only 2 laps to go, then he really has to have the hammer down and get an overtake done of Lewis, but he probably would have done it anyway. It just would have made it exciting. But tell us what happened, Jared.
Well, Ted, like you said, we had this happen, and then it was anything but routine afterwards. So we're going into lap 57 out of 58 now, and this is exciting at this point because all these cars, low fuel, fresh soft tires, these are all going to be kind of the fastest, most nimble the cars have been all weekend. They've got we're late into the day, so at this point the drivers all have like sun shining into their faces and stuff. The stakes are high. So lights go out, turn 1. Max does get a good start this time, is able to cover Lewis off. And that's about the only thing that goes routine here, because behind these 2 guys, the world is just exploding around them.
It's the end of the world as we know it. Yeah.
I think, think about like the meme from Community where walking in with the pizzas and then just the whole room. Like that, Max and Lewis are just like normal racing, and then everyone else is going nuts behind them.
That's what we were laughing about. We were texting, and we were like, Max is probably, what if Max just like sees that stuff in his mirror and he's just like, oh no.
Anyways.
Oh no. Anyway, yeah.
Big old bummer. Well, I'm just gonna win this.
So let me break this down for you guys. Carlos Sainz going wheel to wheel with Pierre Gasly. Both get pushed deep into the braking zone, trying to outdo the other. Fernando Alonso is ahead, racing behind Lewis Hamilton. Sainz comes up, clips the Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso spins out of 3rd place. Pierre Gasly himself has a massive lockup, trying to avoid Alonso. This in turn forces Sergio Perez off the track, who was on his outside and trying to avoid him now. Further back, Logan Sargent with like a classic rookie move, is I think the only way we can explain this, just drives off the track without ever touching his brakes.
It's like amateur
reminiscent of Yuki Tsunoda driving into a wall. So we've got him just driving straight off. He gets which then also brings him into Nick DeVries, who both get beached in the gravel there. Gasly then rejoins the track, thinking there's no one that's going to be behind me still. They all have been off track. There's not just anyone behind, still on the track. There was his teammate, Esteban Ocon. They run into each other, take each other out of the race here. So it's a double Alpine DNF.
The first one of the year. I'm calling it. I already called it.
Yeah.
First one of the year. We're gonna have 3 of them this whole season.
It was just mayhem. But when the cars remaining get to turn 3, Stroll
it's not over yet.
brakes.
Yeah.
Lance Stroll straight off into the gravel. 2 seconds later, any guesses at what color the flag is that is waving?
It ain't yellow.
It ain't yellow. It is another red flag. First time in Formula One history, a third red flag called in the race. And so it's like back in we went years without getting red flags previously. And now we've had 3 in one race, whereas like we've had multiple seasons in a row without any red flags.
I wonder if the FIA, after that third red flag, they're just like, what do we do now? Like, how do we do this?
No one knew what they were going to do.
Because that's what it seemed like was going down. That we were just like so confused. What the hell?
I can think of one race a few years ago that desperately needed one, and this race had too many.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So the red flag, the drivers go back to the pits, and no one knows what's going to be the order here. Eventually, it's decided that because all of the drivers didn't make it out of the first sector, we were going to reset to what the second restart. The second restart was.
So like a Silverstone situation.
Right.
So basically, Jared, you're saying that the crash happened too fast.
The crash happened too fast. They should have waited a few more laps.
Okay.
So what they decide, we're going to stick with the order we just did the last restart on, and that'll be the order here. So now we've got 12 cars left that are going to finish this. A total of 8 DNFs. We end with Max, Lewis, and we end with Max, then Lewis, and then Fernando Alonso gets to keep his podium. So good for him on that front. But I do want to think, what if they didn't do that? What if they kept the order there? Jeff, do you know what would have been the kind of top few spots there if they had just kept that order?
So with all the chaos and all the calamity, in a world where teams fighting for protests and winning protests against the FIA, what have you, at the end of the race, we would have had a Nico Hülkenberg P3 podium.
That would have been his first ever podium.
Correct. And we would have had Yuki Tsunoda getting in 4th place, which is hilarious.
That means he went from like 10th to 4th in 3 corners because Yuki Tsunoda.
And then, because I mean, we can talk about it too, but at the end of the race, we have a major penalty for Carlos Sainz for hitting Fernando Alonso, which knocked him to 12th to the very last, a 5-second penalty.
Podium to 12th, just like that. If
the
order wasn't reset or anything like that, but still, and a lot of people are saying that penalty was pretty brutal because the lap got deleted, but he still hit his opponent off the track and spun him out when Alonso was in a podium position. Whether or not, it's not going to count, he still made and forced the error to spin Alonso. So I stand with the FIA there. Dude deserves a penalty for knocking someone out. Like, that's just straightforward as it gets. But it is pretty harsh that they reset the order anyway.
The argument, though, comes into that the lap was erased, so the lap didn't even count. And why would you count a penalty during a lap that didn't count? So,
but if Fernando would have DNF'd,
that would have been exactly. That adds to it too. Yeah, for sure.
I think it's so messy, but I think you just got to stick to, did that individual thing, was it bad? If it was bad, then he gets the penalty regardless.
Bad boy.
Yeah, exactly. So all that being said, the Australian Grand Prix ends with a rather unremarkable podium, all things considered. But we also have 12 cars finishing the race only, 8 DNFs, 4 of which happened in like the final lap.
So you said unremarkable podium. The last time that the podium had 3 world drivers champions on it?
Champions.
Ooh, interesting. I don't.
Lewis, Sebastian,
Andy?
Kimi Räikkönen. It was
Oh, no way.
Yeah. It was I think 2018
Nerd.
when Kimi was still on Ferrari.
Wow.
So
That's
what, 5 years?
At least,
But
yeah.
even
Doesn't
then,
happen that often.
he only
Anyway.
had like 4 championships to his name, and Seb had 4. So that was a total of like 9, right? There was 11 World Drivers Championship titles on that podium this time around. About to be 12, being honest. But yeah.
If we're already crowning it for Max, yes.
Was crazy.
That brings us to the end of what was a wild Australian Grand Prix.
And welcome back. We're going to dive right into talking points. Thanks for staying tuned. Today we have some interesting topics that we want to dive right into. And I'm going to start off with a proposed change to the sprint race weekend formats. As we head to our next race in Azerbaijan, there is a sprint coming up, but there are going to be some changes proposed, potentially changed for the weekend. What is that going to look like? Well, let me tell you. So instead of having a Friday free practice session followed by a qualifying session, going into a Saturday free practice session that kind of is pointless, going into a sprint session, which then sets up the grid for the race weekend on Sunday, we're looking at a change to Friday. Still has that same practice session to start us off. Drivers can get orientated with the car, find a nice setup, but then it dives right into the Grand Prix qualifying. Instead of setting up the qualifying for the sprint, that actually sets up for the Sunday race on Friday, which then means, well, what happens to the other kind of a thing with the sprint? Well, now there is potentially going to be a second qualifying just for the sprint, and that is on Saturday directly ahead of the sprint. So Saturday means they roll up to a sprint qualifying, sets the order for sprint, and then they race the sprint race later that day. Has no effect on the change of the Grand Prix because that qualifying was on Friday afternoon. How do we feel about this change, potential proposed change, boys? I think it'll actually add a lot more excitement to qualifyings and everything to play for. Still points on Saturday, still a lot of points on Sunday, but get rid of that free practice session too. There was no point. Cars are locked in parc fermé. They can't make any changes to the session for their cars anyway, so why do we even have it? I think this is great because then it's just going to be a more action-packed weekend. But
what about getting rid of free practice altogether and having 3 races? So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then you average the points.
Oh.
Or just 3 Grand Prix, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
This episode is brought to you by Jeff's bad fucking ideas.
All right. So, but here's the idea with that race number 2. Half the drivers go one direction, the other half go the other direction.
Like reverse on the track, and then they just have to stay to the right, or left in Europe.
Well, it's like
figure it out.
Ooh, that would depend on which country we're racing in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That'd actually be kind of cool.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Go ahead, Ted.
Okay, thank you. No, I do like that the sprint race has been separated from the feature race in this proposal, because I think one of the problems that I have with sprint races right now is that there's almost no point in there being a qualifying session in the first place, because the grid just reorders itself based on race pace, and then that's what we're going to get for the race, and we end up getting less overtaking in the feature race because of the sprint race. So allowing there to be 2 qualifying sessions undoes that. So that way the sprint by itself can stand alone and the feature race can have its own qualifying session that means something. I just wish that the 2 sessions would switch. I wish that the sprint qualifying session would be on Friday, and then the feature race qualifying session would be on Saturday, but that's a personal preference.
Yeah.
I'm torn on this one because the one side of me goes, that's more stuff I'm interested in. I'm not interested in practice. But I would, if you've got qualifying stakes twice and race stakes twice, that sounds awesome. the thing that holds me up is I don't think nearly as critical of sprint races as others are. I think they fit fine, is my personal opinion. Yes, I do hear your point, Ted, of like it allows all of those cars to kind of catch up. We've had plenty of good races follow sprint races anyways, though, is kind of my thought. And what I don't want to see is the sprint race become so detached from the full kind of normal Grand Prix weekend that it's I don't want it to be a sideshow. If we've got our main drivers driving in it on a race weekend, I want it to be entwined with the race weekend. I don't want it to be kind of two separate events that are happening on the same weekend. And so I think for me, I would, as much as I'd love to see some kind of more action and more events with stakes, I would choose to leave them alone personally.
Maybe just get rid of practice.
Let's just get rid of practice. That
honestly.
one I'm fine with anyways.
Yeah.
But especially that, the free practice. Yeah. But yeah, so that part I'm very interested in. But otherwise, I would opt to leave them alone because I actually think they're working pretty well as they stand.
Now, remember, guys, these are just proposed changes. All the team bosses met up right before the Australian Grand Prix to present these ideas because now we have 4 weeks until the next race. Lots of time for the FIA to figure things out and for the team bosses to all come to a unanimous agreement. It will not go ahead unless it's unanimous agreements. But so there was
if I know anything about these team bosses, it's that they're great at agreeing on things.
Oh, man. But there was a big change made. Jeff is going to dive right into some new rules that are actually not really new, but yeah,
different.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So we can all agree, speaking of agreeing, that there is nothing more exciting than seeing your driver finish first across that checkered flag. But the FIA is cracking down on teams celebrating on the fence at the finish line. So normally what we've seen...
The FIA is not on the fence on this one.
No. Nice job, Jared.
Nice.
Killer joke. So normally in years past, we've seen a kind of an unwritten, fun little tradition where winning teams, or if your team gets a podium, your engineers, your crew, everybody will come out and they'll jump on the debris protection fence at the end, and they'll be giving you a fist.
Waving a flag.
They're
completely hanging off the fence, just like cheering, and someone's holding someone by the legs, like.
And it's always been sort of a rule that you can't do that for obvious safety reasons. But this
100 people on a fence, over an active racetrack, cars are still going around.
But this season, the FIA are, quote unquote, cracking down on this rule. They've said that they are possibly going to be implementing penalties to teams that have crew standing on the fence. I mean, this is for obvious reason, guys. We don't want people falling on the track. We don't want the flags kind of escaping out of hands and going on the track. But especially this season, FIA saw how crazy the crews were at Jeddah. So Aston Martin,
there was some guys,
Red Bulls, they were completely over, guys. Completely
like whole bodies hanging over them.
Like it looked like a Mexican League soccer game where people were just like insanely just high on the fence, over the fence. It was crazy. So they are cracking down on it. They're saying that they will not be implementing, say, penalties that would affect a race, but a fine would be fair for the teams if they were to continue on this raucous behavior. I'm perfectly fine with it, just because it is crazy, and especially with even fans now getting on the track too early. It's happening again. It happened at this race. I mean, fans are stealing stuff from the track. So there's a lot of stuff with just safety and people being too close to the track or on the track when they aren't supposed to be. And I mean, I'm in total support, even though it is fun to see them getting crazy at the end of it on the fence. But alas, I digress.
There's always down to like one or two individuals that ruin a fun thing for the rest of us, and that was those people hanging over the fence. Yeah, thanks a lot, Red Bull.
Or rather, Aston Martin probably. They were probably
I think it was Aston Martin.
Yeah,
they're not used to getting to celebrate this much, so they're doing it.
Like, what do we do?
Single team member was on the fence.
What do we
Red
do?
Bull, Ferrari,
we jump on the
Mercedes.
track?
Send a couple people out, wave them on. Good job.
We'll
see remember them at the podium.
I remember watching that at Saudi Arabia and thinking, "Whoa, they're like really on that fence," and thinking, "I can't believe that's allowed." It's not
Turns
anymore.
Out.
The ruling though, sorry, Jared. The ruling though is actually pretty. It's kind of insane. So they are not allowed out of the garage at all. So the ruling states that if your team is out of the garage outside of working on the car, you can enforce a penalty or a fine or something like that. So they're going from the most fun thing to possibly being so strict that it's the least amount of energy you can show for your winning car.
I love watching that celebration. It's such a fun thing. It also totally makes sense. I don't even blame the FIA for that decision. It's more so like they will be torn apart as soon as someone gets hurt doing that. That fence is going to fall over with a ton of people on it, or some idiot's going to fall over the top of it because they're going too hard. Yeah. And then all of us in social media world and every journalist on earth is going to be going to the FIA saying, how could they allow this to happen? They are so reckless. And so the FIA is going like, listen, if something goes wrong, y'all are going to yell at us for it. So we need to prevent it. And now all of us get to yell at them for being safe instead of being dangerous. So I don't blame them for it. I'm sad to see it go, but
we'll see though. If Haas gets a podium, we'll see.
Yeah,
it'll be worth the fine. It'll be worth
it. For real. They're going to need another sponsor for just their penalty.
Rich Energy 2.0 is going to be sponsoring them just so that they can celebrate.
Yeah. But hey, guys, an old friend was at the Grand Prix this weekend.
Matthew McConaughey?
No, this one was a native Australian.
Tom Cruise.
Exactly. Tom Cruise is a native Australian. But it was actually former FIA director Michael Massey. And if you're a Mercedes fan like me, you shudder when you hear that name. So to see him, and this was his first appearance, by the way, since parting ways with the FIA and after a mishandling, I would say, of a situation. And earlier in the episode, I referenced a race that desperately needed a red flag, and then this one having too many. My question is, do you think that the FIA was trying to show Michael Massey that you can indeed call a red flag for a race?
Yeah.
Do you think this was a call out maybe?
No, I think this was them just making wild decisions in honor of him and kind of in celebration of him. It was like, Michael's here. Let's show him what we're capable of.
Yeah. Do you think he left the race at the end being like, oh, that race was a shit show? Why were there so many red flags?
I imagine he walked out 5 laps to the finish.
Yeah,
and just
exactly.
Went, this race is over. I'm going to start heading to the car, get home early. And put the kids to sleep, So, but
Toto was like, no, Michael, no, you must stay till the end, Michael.
I've been emailing you, Michael.
Michael, have you checked my email?
Don't click the first attachment because it's a virus, but the second attachment is the data that I was trying to show you.
Michael, you're being a real massive asshole.
All right. Speaking of Total Wolff, I think it's the most important news to come from the past week or so. He's been challenged by Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren, for a Vegas boxing match when we've got the Vegas Grand Prix happening. Now,
1,000 on Zach Brown right now.
Yeah, obviously this isn't actually going to happen. It was joking, but it makes me wonder first, who do you think would win in a fight between Toto Wolff and Zach Brown? Toto's got reach, Zach's got the poundage.
I feel like Zach could take a lot of hits. You know what I'm saying? I feel like Toto could dish him out too with that reach, that height. You know, it's a good thing he's not fighting against Christian Horner, because all he would have to do is reach his arm out and just forehead, palm, you know, and just no, but that would actually be a good. I can't say for the weight difference, but
I think it would come down to stamina to some extent. I think that Toto Wolff's in a little better shape. So like if the fight lasts a few rounds, I fancy Toto's chances, but I think Zach's going to be gunning for that early round knockout, and whichever one forces their will get it.
All right. Important question though for us to determine here. If you could have from any kind of Formula One personalities a boxing match, who would you like to see in that boxing match?
Yuki Tsunoda versus anyone.
You know what? I've got something to add to that. Yuki Tsunoda versus Angela Cullen. Lewis Hamilton's, or maybe no, I'm going to change it. Angela versus Lewis.
Oh,
I'm wondering if
she knows all the weak points.
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton's former personal trainer, who they recently split up. So maybe they need to work out some past baggage or something. Let's work it out in the ring. That's what I want to see.
Man.
I like that one.
That'd be fun. It would be fun to see Ocon versus Russell, because they're the exact same height and they're both just lanky dudes with I just feel like that fight would just be arms just flailing and, you know, kind of just like
have to be the worst fighters on the grid. Like there's no way they're like good at it.
Seriously. When Ocon was confronted by Max after that one race a few years ago. Yeah.
2018.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yep.
Didn't care that much, but
he had it on lock.
Brazil 2018. Yep, got it.
But it looked like Ocon did not fancy a fight or understand how to behave when Max was coming at him. So
yeah. Like Ocon would be all trash talk and George would be like, well, then let's go, let's fight. And Ocon's like, you wouldn't actually fight me though, you know, and George is like, no, I'm ready, let's go, let's fight. And Ocon
I think George would just like
you don't have it in
forever though. Yeah. I think both of those guys would like just circle forever and never actually throw a punch.
I think they would throw jabs intentionally missing.
Yeah, so like neither actually wants to land a shot.
They just want to look like boxers.
Jeff, do you have a preferred boxing matchup?
Of course, but it's not boxing. It's a cage fight.
Okay.
Cage fight. In the middle of the fighting arena, there's one metal pole as a weapon.
Okay.
And standing at the corners is Michael Schumacher, and the other is Fernando Alonso.
Oh.
Wow.
This one has the potential of actually getting nasty, I think.
Is it Michael Schumacher currently?
No, it's 2008.
Okay, good call.
And Mick Schumacher is in the crowd, and he may watch his father die.
Oh.
But
dude,
he doesn't.
Fight like that would go to the 10th round, and then it would be put up to judges' scores to figure out the winner. I feel like.
Okay,
you know, like
I've got a better pitch for you guys: Bernie Eccleston versus Jackie Stewart.
Ooh,
two old little dudes.
Couple of old dudes.
Yeah,
dude, just like a nice punch assassination right in the gut.
I don't even know if they could lift boxing gloves.
scratch
bare knuckle
other.
Because they couldn't hold the boxing gloves.
What about
instead of instead of wearing a mouth guard, they just take out their teeth.
What about Martin Brundle versus Will Buxton?
Oh, that's
Sky Sports versus F1 TV.
My money's on Brundle, dude.
Who's gonna call the fight though?
That's true.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
Okay. Jensen Button.
Yes, Daniel Ricciardo and Jensen Button, or Jolyon Palmer and Jensen Button. So that way, it's still F1 TV versus Sky Sports.
Their representation. That's a good call.
What about the PK guy versus the FBI?
How about Nelson Piquet versus the world?
versus the FBI versus the Saudi government?
No, it's us versus the Saudi government.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like our odds there.
Same.
And then on that note, and I think the important work we've done here at the F1 Garage podcast, I think it's time to call it an end. See you in Vegas.